No pressure. Well, I'm going to start with a little while ago, I was speaking at Salisbury Cathedral, and Bishop Nick Holtom, who was there at the time, had invited me in, and I'd got my radio mic, so I'm really pleased I don't have a radio mic today, because what I did was just before I went on, I went into the bathroom to wash my hands, and I thought this is the opportunity to pray for the congregation. It was the 4:30 slot, and you know what 4:30 slots are like. But I accidentally flipped the on button, and so everyone in the room heard the following: Lord, I pray that the people listening to this stay awake, and that it makes a real difference. And at which point, the dean knocked on the door, and he said, and the congregation said, Amen. So that's my entry. I will do my best to keep it to the time. So we've heard a lot today about the environmental crises. We know that there have been a number of tidal waves that we've been faced with: COVID, looming recession, climate change, and we've also heard quite a bit about the risks of biodiversity collapse. And we asked a number of churches last year if you could list the top 5 things that concern you the most, what would they be? And out at the top came climate change, extinction of species, the Ukraine conflict featured towards the end into this year, pandemics, and the costs of keeping cathedrals running and churches running was a common theme as well. And last autumn, a significant survey took place led by Bath University, and it spoke to 10,000 young people and asked them the question, what are the things you are most feeling about the state we see ourselves in on the planet? 75% of those 10,000 said we see the future as frightening. 65% said they feel governments have failed young people on climate. And a little bit further down, over half, 6% said that they believed humanity was doomed. And we've heard this afternoon a repeated theme, haven't we, that unless we tackle the crises ahead, 2 billion people on this planet face starvation, and loss to nature as well is equally stark. But knowing what the problem is only the start of the conversation. So pause for a moment and ask yourself the following question: what is it that gives you hope for our planet in this time of crisis? Can we reimagine a nature and community-rich future? And so I'm proposing today that at the start of re-earthing our cathedrals, we can do so in 5 very simple steps. This morning we heard a lot about the importance of one thing, which was silence. Churches and cathedral spaces are often very loud spaces. But actually, if we reflect on the journey of Jesus, during times of crisis and struggle, what was it that he did more of than anything else? And that was to take himself out into wilderness spaces, to stop, to be silent, to listen to the inner voice, and listen to the sounds around him. So the starting point for us as a cathedral community here is stopping, pausing, reflecting. What are the facts of the crises we've found? And we've just heard about the facts on climate change and the facts that we may not reach net zero by 2030. It's also about stopping and reflecting on our personal journey. Now, forgive all the writing on this slide. We're just going to pick out on a few. Every issue, then, as we stop, has facts. And here are a few for the disconnection from nature and churches in our country right now. 75% of children spend less time outside than prison inmates. 1 in 5 children don't play outside on average at all, anywhere in the UK, in a typical day. 4 out of every 5 children are not adequately connected to nature. Only 10% of our young people have access to outdoor learning. And 75% of Anglican churches and cathedrals have less than 5 under-16s in their congregation, according to a recent study. I won't dwell on that, but that's just a slide with some background on where the facts come from. And for those of you who collect facts and collect talks, feel free to look up those references afterwards. But the gloomy statistics hold an alternative viewpoint. In a survey that also took place last year for Natural England, 83% of young people said they were really happy in nature. It made them feel alive. And that, we're thinking about the mental health crisis, that's important. 70% said they would spend more time outside post-COVID. 82% want to do more in nature. And an amazing half of our young people, and I'm a dad with 4 kids, so this surprised me somewhat, said that they were motivated by being quiet, silent in nature. Yeah, it's surveys, what can you say? As opposed to just exercise and sport. Nearly 70% visit an urban green space each month. And Kate Williams from Gloucester Diocese talked a lot in the last few months about how there's huge opportunity in taking church outside. And so on the one hand, we see a growing disconnect from nature, a fear of the future, a fear of the impacts of climate change, of biodiversity loss, of the crisis that our cathedrals and churches face and our nation faces. And yet on the other hand, people are desperate to reconnect to faith and desperate to reconnect to nature. And the two can work together. So I profoundly believe that cathedrals in the UK can become true beacons of hope for people and for the planet. And with that, we're going to go on briefly to the other 4 points. I'm going to hand over to Regina for that before I round off with a closing thought. Regina.
Thank you. Now let's see if I can get on with multitasking here. Keeping in mind what Andy has just shared with us, I would like to continue this journey with you of the 5 quite simple steps to walk differently in a time of crisis, and would love to do that looking at cathedrals and how we can use spaces of cathedrals in a different way. And the first step was stop, and I will continue with what we call plot. So plan and think about how we can create spaces of wonder around our cathedrals, starting to not just think about the cathedral as a building, as a space indoors, but also using the land around it. And how can we create spaces where the whole of it glorifies God and is a haven for both nature and people. Originally, if we read our Bible, it all started in a garden. It started with Adam and Eve walking in the Garden of Eden, meeting with God in the evenings, chatting about how the day was. And I would like to think that this was the first church services. Possibly not Anglican, you might disagree. But and then slowly we moved away from spending time with God in his creation. And the first accounts of that are in the Bible, where the first temples were built and people came to the temple to meet with God. And since then, this trend actually has continued. And when we think about meeting with God and going to church, it's about going into buildings, meeting with him in buildings. But I would love to challenge us and see maybe now really is the time to turn it around and venture back into creation, walk back into the Garden of Eden and start connecting with God again within his creation. From there, I would like to go what we call sow. So how do we include our congregation in this journey? And how can small steps also make a big difference? Inspired by God's creation, his living canvas that we are surrounded by. And so thinking around what cathedrals already have done is actually quite inspiring. And Bishop Graham Asher has actually basically stolen my bit on that when he shared about what so many cathedrals are already doing and the journeys that they are already on. And a couple of cathedrals we had the privilege of meeting and journeying with. And so Southall Minster is one of them. In the beginning I was always confused because some people say Southall Minster, other Southwell, and I'm Austrian, and so it's a bit confusing. But getting there was really exciting, and where they have started using their beautiful land to really manage it for biodiversity, creating big wildflower meadows to encourage native wildflowers and pollinating species, and creating spaces that are really brilliant for nature, but also for people. But not every cathedral has huge grounds around them. And so we've been to Lichfield Cathedral, where the immediate grounds around the cathedral are not as huge, but it's land that has been managed in a very formal way for a long time. But now they're exploring of thinking more creatively and doing it in a way to really create spaces that invite people in, that spaces for nature with wildflower areas, planting fruiting trees where it inspires people and gives permission to pick fruits, and creating spaces where people can just enjoy and meditate and meet their creator within the space that is given around the cathedral. And this for me is really exciting. And sometimes the journey starts with quite small steps of planting one tree. But this one tree in a few years' time will bear amazing fruit and encourage other people to do the same, be an inspiration and give people hope that actually they can make a difference with the spaces that they have. And once you've finished sowing and started small things, it is time to grow and think, well, where can this journey lead? And what is the vision? Where else can it take us? What else can we consider? And so it is about taking it one step further, connecting with the community and helping the local community reconnect with nature through the inspiration that they get from coming onto the land. And so it's also about possibly doing something quite radical, of taking a few Sundays where we don't do church services in our beautiful buildings, but take the service outside and meet and do worship in the cathedral gardens, or if we don't have cathedral gardens, in a local park, and take our services to where the people are, to also meet people who might not walk into a church, who won't make it past the beautifully carved wooden doors. And it's about also creating community spaces where people feel free to come in and connect with nature through fun, through food growing, sensory gardens, and havens for species like birds as well, putting up nest boxes, and just facilitating spaces where people can again reconnect with nature and meet God within his beautiful creation. Naturally, every growing season is followed by harvest, and I think we all celebrate harvest every autumn, but I think I would like to ask us to think to even do harvest slightly differently. I was a little confused when I walked into a church and harvest was with a lot of piles of tinned food. And I was like, that's a little bit disconnected. And so I would love to think about, okay, how can we do harvest differently? Connected with the land again, and take the harvest outdoors, take it where the people are, create a festival where together we can celebrate everything that has been achieved. And doing it in a space where community joins in, where you cook together with the food that has been grown either on the cathedral grounds or in people's homes, and share and also create spaces where people can share stories of hope, stories that they experienced in this journey throughout the year. But I think harvest is not just about looking back and reflecting on what has happened and enjoying the fruit of the labor, but it's also about taking this moment and remembering all the things that we have learned, and in this moment inspired, dreaming forwards. So possibly including in a harvest festival a challenge where people can hand in ideas of what they would like to see happen on the community grounds or cathedral grounds, so that the community is also listened to and they feel part of the journey, and that they can make a difference as well as joining in with what is already given. And multitasking failed. We do live, like we have heard multiple times today already, we live in a time that is really challenging. We live in a time where humanity is facing things that we have never faced before. And so it is a time that can be quite scary, and where fear is what most of us feel quite often. But I think it is also a time that is really exciting, where we as a church, as God's people, can step up and be his hands again, where the church can be the space that people come to for hope and inspiration. And it is not just a one-time journey and then, yes, tick, let's move on to the next, but it is a continuous journey where we revisit those 5 points again and again. And we will meet obstacles, but those obstacles are not there to stop us, but for us to overcome. And where we will meet problems, but I like to believe that problems are actually just solutions that are not yet found. I would like to leave you with a few questions. What will your 5 steps be for the future of the planet at your cathedral? Can actions at my cathedral really change the future? Can the worst impacts of climate change and nature loss still be avoided? Richard Louv wrote in his book, Last Child in the Woods, "We cannot protect something we do not love. We cannot love what we do not know, and we cannot know what we do not see or hear or sense." And so I would love to see cathedrals to be these spaces of reconnection, these spaces of wonder, where we can all start the journey right at the beginning again, find our moments of wonder, find our love for our Creator again, and love creation, and therefore then learn together how we can make a difference to create something that is incredible and beautiful and transformative.
Thanks, Regina. So as we go on to the final slide and we round off this session this evening, I want to leave you with a thought from Hebrews. Before I do so, just to say this, Arosha as a network only survives because of your incredible support. Without the church, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. We've grown from 500 churches just 5 or 6 years ago, being part of the Eco Church network, to today over 6,000 registered Eco Churches. The Partners in Action program, which is looking at land in much more detail and reconnecting cathedrals and communities and spaces together, has grown from just 12 2 years ago to 30 today. And we've got a waiting list of 50 projects, including several cathedrals, which we are, between the two of us, trying to visit over the course of the next year. So we've got our work cut out. We need your prayer, we need your support, because these are exciting times, but they are daunting times. And as the need grows, so the demand grows. So we need your support and encouragement through it. But hope is not lost. There's still time for real adventure, for creativity, for amazing change, but we must act at scale, and we must do it together with our communities, not just inside our churches and cathedrals, but those outside the doors too. Hebrews 11, verse 1. Now faith is being confident in what we hope for and assurance of what we do not see. We hope for a better future. We do not see all the ways to get there, but we know that through creativity, through imagination, and through working together as a community of believers, we can see lasting and profound change. Thanks, Adrian.
So could I ask all our contributors to come back onto the stage, please? I've been given a few questions to put to you, but let me thank you also again for a splendid afternoon of challenge and fact and interpretation. It's been very enjoyable, sobering, realistic making, and myth busting. Thank you. Okay, we've only got a few minutes, but three fairly pithy questions have been given me already. If there are any others in the room, I'll try and take them. But the first question goes to the heart of one of our major concerns. Cathedral finance is dependent on investments. How will the energy crisis affect the money markets and savings? Now, we've got our investment advisors here as well today, and that's quite an opportunity for CCLA perhaps to comment on. But can you talk about what you think is the power of mammon, either to reform itself or to lock us into what we've, I'm afraid, what we've become accustomed to? Any ideas on that? Do you want to have a go, Julian?
Do I have to do anything? Is that working?
Yes.
I gave a talk to the top 100 pension funds a couple of weeks ago on this question, so I had an answer prepared for them, which is, given what I said, there are only three resources that matter in delivering on any climate mitigation plan. So the investor question to the corporate is, have you secured sufficient access to the three resources required to deliver on your plan? British Airways are committed to net zero by 2050. There is no possibility whatsoever that they will deliver on that. And you could find that out by asking them whether they've got enough biomass, hydrogen, synthetic kerosene, or anything else. And if it's not on the balance sheet, then they haven't got a plan. The same with Shell, the same with ArcelorMittal. They may even be honest in intention in their plan, but unless on their balance sheet you can see that they've secured access to the resources that they require, then you should be devaluing them. You know that they won't be able to operate within the law of the UK by 2050.
Thank you. You can decline to answer questions. Yes. Share the resources, please.
Except mine. Oh, yeah, it does work.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
One of the things that struck me a lot about personal investment in the last couple of years is there are more and more portfolios which are not only divested from fossil fuels, but from tobacco, from arms, and from alcohol. Now, they take some searching, and for political reasons, it's probably not safe to mention them in the room now, but if you want to find out a little bit more about some of the ones that we've been looking at, they do exist, they are growing in number, and they're growing in their ethnicity, is that the right word? But where they are not just looking at fossil fuels, but looking at a much wider range of issues. So that is more to do with personal investment, but certainly from a personal investment point of view, there are choices that we can make that were not available 5 or 6 years ago, which is good news.
Okay. If you want to talk to our investment advisors, CCLA, and our lead sponsors, they are around, and I'm sure they'd also like to make a case. Another question we heard this morning about the mental health crisis for children and young people and the need to invest in and engage with them. How can we do this if we still invest and engage in fossil fuels? Who'd like to have a go at that? Bishop Graham?
Well, I'd probably have something to say there as a newly elected member of the Board of Governors of the Church Commissioners. So, as people here will know, the General Synod agreed that the national investment bodies of the Church of England could continue to invest in oil and gas until 2023, as long as the companies were aligned and in their policies to the Paris Agreement. And they've disinvested where they are not aligned to that. And it's about tactics, essentially. Either there are those who advocate divestment from fossil fuel companies as a tactic to bring about change, and the Church Commissioners with the Pensions Board have taken the view supported by General Synod of engagement, so to try to bring about change to the world's policies. As Alan Smith, the first Church States Commissioner, puts it, he dreams of a net zero world, not just a net zero portfolio. And there is very active engagement around the whole area of ESG by the Church Commissioners and by the Pensions Board, looking at human rights issues, environmental issues, whole range of and governance issues, to ensure that the investments are aligned to those values that we hold.
Yeah. We've seen from the Arosha statistics, from your wonderful survey of young people's attitudes to the world, and environmental anxiety weighs very, very heavy upon them. So that's a grand question, but please keep talking that one through, because this unhappiness quotient reported amongst our young people is of immense pastoral concern. And if I just share a confidence with you, here I am, dean of a leafy, fairly prosperous town with a wonderful cathedral and a wonderful choral establishment, which has to use independent education to supply its choristers. That's an issue in itself. But 4 of those young people, during the course of lockdown, reported self-harm and 2 attempts at suicide. That's within our choral foundation. And as we debriefed about that, it was this general uncertainty and anxiety about the way the world is. So this is not simple ideology or wokeness or whatever. The impact of the way we live and the future we're heading for is having a direct and countable effect on the people we deal with day by day. So I just put that in as an observation.
Adrian, the resources that we put into particularly adolescent mental health is risible in this nation. You know, in Norfolk at the moment, people who are needing the support of that service have to wait 2 years.
Yeah,
that is no good for a 13-year-old self-harming, needing help. You know, there needs to be huge step change in investment in mental health.
Yeah, and it's not one problem, it's this interconnected thing that we've been talking about so much today. Now we've got another searching question from, let me try and pronounce your name properly. It's from Adi Lazi on Imembe from Manchester. And she says, seeing that the equator runs through Africa and the equator emissions are very high over there, what can we do to help them? Julian?
I am very hesitant in claiming any right to answer the question because of what Greta says, that the only words that matter now are actions. And we as a country have lied through our teeth about this issue from beginning to end. And until we have done something to demonstrate that a zero emissions lifestyle is something that we can embrace and celebrate, I'm not sure we've got the right to say anything whatsoever to a developing country. I think the one thing that we can watch for is that the economists have taken over the idea of what development is, and we shouldn't allow them to get away with it. GDP growth is not the measure of development by any other human metric, perhaps especially in this community. My wife's family are from Zambia, so I have a little exposure. And their treatment of death, their understanding of community, the idea of sharing, of compassion, all of that, we have so much to develop from Africa. So within that discussion, I think we should be careful not to allow it to be a one-way discussion about who's waiting to develop, because we ought to be developing much more to learn from that. The plausible argument that the UK should be investing to support the development of renewables, to support an economic program that's compatible with zero emissions, seems to me unequivocal. But our history is one of utter meanness in overseas aid. So I think we have a challenge in making a moral argument to policy over that area. We haven't won that as a country. We're going backwards on that. I would love to hear what you have to say, because you have much more right to speak on it than we do.
Thank you.
Just add that at COP26, as often happens with the big conferences, some of the best conversations take place in the bathroom or on the bus. And on the bus on the way back, I was sitting next to the leader. Yeah, always, not always in the bathroom. The leader of the Tocantins Indians from Brazil. And she was a 24-year-old. And she said, I've sat here through nearly 2 weeks of conversations. And the one thing that's been missing from all the conversations is any leader, any world leader coming to me and saying, as a leader of a major tribe that cover an area the size of a West European country, what are your views about how to tackle the crisis? Because you have indigenous local knowledge that we've actually lost in the West, that we've lost connection with. And she said it's amazing how many wanted to have a photo opportunity of standing next to somebody in their full Amerindian regalia, but not one wanted to have that conversation. But you've just made that point of what's your view? Actually, we are not the legitimate folk who've got an opinion that we can really give into this space. We need to be asking them. And I would add to finalize that 2 years ago I was visiting Costa Rica and spent some time in the rainforest with groups of local people who were exploring new solutions to climate change for the future, and saying, you know, the one thing that's really frustrating is we believe we've got creative solutions, but we cannot find anyone who's willing to listen to us.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the wild card question now. We've had a bit of dialectic on the platform, perhaps, with Julian saying to us, the Church of England's aspirations to 2030 are perhaps unrealisable, and then we've got poor Bishop Graham here having to try and defend the general sense of it. So I just wondered if how you'd wean perhaps General Synod off what might be an unrealisable aspiration.
Well, I think we also need to know that some of the history here. That
Yeah.
when the motion went to General Synod, it was for 2050.
Yeah.
And it was amended on the floor of General Synod to 2030. I voted against that. I then voted for the amended motion. The then lead bishop for the environment, Nick Holtham, was incandescent at the end of that debate and thoroughly depressed because he knew it was impossible. Now, I will say to you, it is impossible that we will get to net zero by 2030, as Julian has said. But I'm going to give it my best shot, because I think unless we are showing leadership and trying to really deliver as much as we can over the next 8 years, well, we're not going to have that distinctive Christian voice in this space. I'm keen, and we've already discussed things last year. We need to be harnessing the knowledge and from the academy in our conversations. But I'm going to go on encouraging as best as possible us to get to net zero by 2030, because I think that is showing leadership in this space.
Thank you. Julian, do you want to write a reply?
I don't think it's my place, actually. I think Graham owns that responsibility for leadership, which I don't. I'm useful if I'm trying to present numbers and show how they add up. I don't think I have a right of comment on leadership here.
Thank you. But I just wonder how we get leadership and the academy really working productively so that we're not chasing the moon. Because there's nothing worse than kind of policy failure to stop initiative and to depress and demotivate. So how do we get that kind of realism introduced into the debate that is still motivating and inspiring and urgent, but isn't risking total failure?
Is there a challenge, Graham, so one of the leaders of the IPCC, 2 years ago, I had a heated debate on stage with, and I said there is no chance, never mind 50%, of staying under 1.5 Celsius. I still advocate that, and if I was a betting man, I don't know whether you want to put a bet on it, but I would say that in less than 5 years' time, we will be over 1.5 Celsius. But he said, no, we cannot change the narrative because we will frighten people. I wonder, though, whether it's worth, I think Julian was suggesting this, revisiting the narrative now while we can, because I strongly do not believe that the Church of England can reach the target it's setting itself for 2030, and therefore it's setting itself up to fail. Now, the challenge of that is you then have congregations who will look at it and say, well, you've just done what the IPCC did on the 1.5. You set a target that actually you know is highly aspirational, but you're not going to be able to reach.
Okay.
Look, I believe in hope-filled realism.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be realistic about this, but I'm also going to be hope-filled with it. Mm-hmm. And I do not mind failure. Look, we're here because we follow a person who on the cross, in the desolation of everything, was deserted. Nobody wanted to be around a failure, and yet he changed the world. And for me, I really do not mind in 8 years' time standing up before General Synod saying we've failed. But I believe in 8 years' time there'll be lots and lots of really good news stories to tell. And there are already good news stories that you as cathedrals are already leading the way in. And I just want to capture that sense of an energy behind that, and those who are engaged with eco-church so well, and do the very best that we can.
So have a bloody good try. Yes, I like that. Yes, we'll have a bloody good try. Right, good. It's 5:15, so we really must stop. But before I do, I'd like to present you with the order of the Newcastle Conference. There we are. I think I speak on behalf of everyone here that it's a real pleasure to be in the presence of expertise, wisdom, and thought out things. So bless you for coming, and thanks for some stonking presentations. We have now got to do a bit of practical engineering ourselves, so I'd like you please to turn every chair to face east, and you've got exactly 10 minutes in which to do it. Thank you.